Immigration, a political issue that ends friendships, divides families, and makes it impossible to get your order right at KFC. It has been an issue that has plagued mankind since its inception, and something that has been the foundation of thousands of nations throughout time, like the United States, Mexico, Australia, and practically any Slavic country that made its way to the rest of Europe from the wretched bogs of Dresden. As such, the issue of this phenomenon has been an active question throughout the world since forever. Yet, when we talk about immigration, we mostly discuss it in the context of hordes of Central Americans pole vaulting over the Mexican-American border, or the hordes of Arabs doing a 400-kilometer freestyle swim across the Mediterranean, but never about the hordes of Balkans racing in packs of third-hand 2003 BMW Series 3S's to Germany, congesting every single European highway under the sun. And that's precisely what we'll be doing today. How did Balkans first come to Western Europe? Why are they still there? And what has been the consequences of the Balkans on humanity? And will the West ever heal from it? Stick around to find out. Balkan immigration to the West has generally been a relatively new occurrence. With the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the Balkans were plagued with war, ethnic cleansing, and general economic collapse. The region as a whole was left in ruin and plagued with instability, and every couple of years, a new conflict would sprout its ugly head and further devastate the region. While many Balkans sought to fix this by engaging in nation building and establishing their countries like a phoenix from Ottoman ashes, others just simply sought to get the fuck out. As such, tens of thousands decided to dip and seek greener pastures in the West. The primary destinations for Balkans at this time were the fledgling colonial nations of the New World, such as the United States, that actively looked for a new batch of cis-white men to manifest destiny by committing genocide against the natives in the pursuit of establishing Walmart parking lots on their holy lands. Hence why, as early as 1861 in the American Civil War, you could find around 400 Serbs fighting on the side of the Confederacy, alongside with some other Croats and Montenegrins. In the late 19th and early 20th century, this migration only intensified, and many Balkans expanded their horizons for a new homeland, encompassing the lush lands of Canada and venomous landscapes of Australia. But still, the United States remained the number one destination for many. From 1880 until 1924, it is estimated that around 12 million people migrated to the United States from its main port of entry in Ellis Island, New York. A large chunk of these new migrants came from Eastern Europe and the Balkans, with hundreds of thousands of Greeks, Romanians, Hungarians, Yugoslavs, Bulgarians, and Albanians going across the Atlantic to try their luck in the land of the free. Many settled in New York, but others continued westward, settling in industrial hubs like Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, and Toronto. Overall, they sought employment in emerging factories, steel mills, and railroads, as North America was rapidly industrializing and experiencing an economic boom. Thus, it is no surprise that the Serbian poster child, Nikola Tesla, found his fame and lack of fortune in this time period. Overall, although the largest Balkan migration wave occurred here during this time period, the vast majority that came here then eventually integrated and more or less lost their identities, becoming full-fledged members of American society through a couple of generations. However, the story goes a bit different during the second wave. If there was a single conflict that was felt around the globe, then that would have to be World War II, as the hordes of German Boo sophomores in the Midwest can attest. Europe in particular was absolutely and completely devastated by this conflict. Nations were practically razed to the ground due to bombs and fighting that occurred as a result of it. Eastern Europe and the Balkans alongside that also had another travesty imposed on them after it: communist dictatorship. As such, the dynamics of how the world worked were changed to its core. In an effort to rebuild from the disaster of the Second World War, and with the ambition to boost the economy to be competitive with the sole world superpower at the time, America, many European states decided to open the gates for immigrants. Starting in 1955 and ending in 1973, Western European countries like Germany and Austria founded the Gastarbeiter program, which aimed to provide easier migration for citizens of Turkey, Yugoslavia, Greece, Italy, and Spain in an effort to boost economic growth and fill in shortages caused by the war. Initially, the program aimed for these guest workers, as is their name when translated from German, to stay a couple of months to maybe a couple of years, collect their paychecks, and then back off where they came from. However, this quickly turned out to be far from the case. As I mentioned previously, the Balkans too were not only devastated by the physical destruction caused by the war, but also by the implementation of the new authoritarian socialist regimes. Right after the war, when the new regimes came to power, many fled from Yugoslavia, Romania, and Bulgaria, seeking to escape a political system which they disagreed with, to countries like the US, Australia, Western European nations, and even those in South America, particularly the Croatians, because of reasons. The period between the 50s and the 70s came to be known as the largest scale Yugoslav migration period, which established strong Balkan diasporas all over the Western world, especially in cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, Melbourne, Vienna, Stuttgart, and Munich. This migration was only strengthened as German companies actively sought out gastarbeiters in Yugoslavia, going to a large number of Yugoslav factories and recruiting people. Focusing more on Europe, Yugoslav gastarbeiters, although initially planning to work in these countries for a set number of years before returning home, quickly saw that the salaries and work conditions in Germany and Austria were much better than those in their motherland. Thus, many decided to settle in these new lands of opportunity for good. German companies initially would give Yugoslav workers one-year contracts, after which they'd be exchanged for native Germans. However, the vast majority of companies decided that it would be better to just keep renewing these contracts with workers they spent a good chunk of time training, rather than substituting them for German newbies they'd have to spend time training again. By building good rapport with their employers, Balkaners were able to vouch for their friends and family back in their home countries to be hired by the company as well, which only further brought more migrants to Western Europe. However, things changed in 1973 when the Middle East did what they do best and chimped out over Israel. The United States, being the eternal bitches to AIPAC and staunch supporters of Israeli colonialism, rushed to the aid of Israel as it was being ganged up on by Egypt and Syria. As you can imagine, the rest of the Arab world did not like this one bit, and decided to embargo the West as a countermeasure. This caused a worldwide economic crisis and ultimately a decline in Europe's economy. As a result, the Gastarbeiter program was ground to a halt as prices skyrocketed and demand crashed. By this point, Germany hosted about 14 million Gastarbeiters, 12 million of which packed their bags and left. However, 2 million still remained, as they had already invested way too much of their time and effort in the lands devoid of humor, and God only knew what awaited them back home, considering the dinar wasn't that much better than today's forint. Now, the end of the Gastarbeiter program and the recession that caused it definitely lowered immigration from the Balkans to the West for a bit. But just as Gorbachev tore down that wall, Balkan migrants tore down Western border fences. The collapse of socialism and its authoritarian regimes in the Eastern Bloc resulted in a new migration wave from the Balkans from countries like Romania, Bulgaria, and Albania, who had previously kept their people locked in their own countries like a redditor the neighbor's kids in his basement. Although the economic situation in these countries was already dire, with the transition to capitalism, things drastically got worse, which pushed hundreds of thousands to seek a better life westwards. In Romania alone, since the 1989 revolution to today, more than 4 million Romanians left the country. In Yugoslavia, on the other hand, shit decided to hit the fan, as the country was engulfed in a brutal civil war plagued with a myriad of secessionist factions which would go on to commit heinous acts of ethnic cleansing against one another. In total, it is estimated that this series of wars created 2.3 million refugees, 400,000 of which fled to other countries. About 200,000 fled to Germany, 60,000 to Hungary, and 50k to Austria, and another 44k to Sweden. This, as you can imagine, rocked the boat across Europe. In the immediate events of this migration wave, many organized crime networks stemming from Serbia, Albania, Kosovo, and Bulgaria took advantage of this chaos. One of the most notable groups was the Zemun clan, which engaged in drug trafficking and kidnappings of high-profile figures throughout Europe. In southern Italy, the Albanian mob saw prominence, which utilized firearms and explosives from the war in robberies and extortions. Meanwhile, Bulgarian mafiosos engaged in running prostitution rings and carjackings. Throughout most of the 90s, this prevailed as the main issue of the day and significantly worsened the situation for many Balkan immigrants. Unlike countries like America, Canada, and Australia, which were founded via colonialism and have had immigration as a core in how their societies work, where over time anyone can become American, Canadian, or Australian, this was never the case in Europe. Unlike these states founded in the New World, where practically everyone came from somewhere else, European states were founded on the principles of ethno-nationalism. Essentially, each state, in theory, was founded to unify an ethno-linguistic group into a country of their own, where they share the same language, culture, and more or less religion. So, although Balkaners could immigrate into these countries and enjoy secular rights, they could never fully integrate and be considered as German or Austrian. As a result, since the beginning of Balkan immigration to European countries, discrimination against them has been a prevalent issue, as is the case for many immigrants today. Throughout the gastarbeiter program, Balkaners were mostly given manual labor jobs that were lower paid. Immigrant women were paid around 30% less than their male counterparts. This led to prejudices against them as being poor, lower class, uneducated, which also led to job and housing discrimination. With the emergence of the 90s mafias and gangs, these prejudices only strengthened, as now many of the law-abiding Balkan immigrants were automatically prescribed the label of criminals as well. It also didn't help that the media in Europe also focused on covering high-profile cases regarding Balkan mafia crime syndicates, which just further exacerbated this problem. With the beginning of the new millennium, the chaos from the collapse of the Iron Curtain in Yugoslavia subsided. Immigration to Western Europe from the Balkans slowed down a bit until the integration of Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia into the EU. With their accession, millions left their countries of origin and settled in Western European states. Bulgaria, in particular, has one of the highest emigration rates in the world, as over 1 million people left the country since 2007, which is about roughly 15% of the nation's population. Similarly to them, Romania saw over 2.3 million people leave between the periods of 2001 and 2016, which means that about 20% of the people born in the country no longer reside in it. Although this brought economic benefits in Western countries, emigration from the Balkans has severely damaged these states. Practically all countries in the region suffer from severe brain drain and labor shortages, especially in highly specialized industries such as IT, engineering, and the medical sector, alongside manual labor shortages in industries relating to agriculture and construction. As a result, even though these countries have seen an increase in their economies and the living standard, the amount of people leaving them has weighed down on their growth potential. And interestingly enough, in an attempt to tackle this problem, Balkan states have opened their borders for immigrants from Africa and Southern Asia, particularly to how the West opened theirs for them, making the cycle go full circle. But that's a story for a different time. Although in the initial waves of Balkan immigration, the diaspora has faced stark difficulties in social and employment discrimination, things have started to change. First and foremost, with the beginning of the 21st century, countries like Germany and Austria amended their immigration and assimilation laws so that many immigrants could acquire citizenship much easier than before and become permanent migrants. As the diaspora had rooted itself strongly since the 60s, these laxer laws allowed for them to integrate better into Western European society, with many opening their own businesses and moving up the social and economic ladder. As Balkan immigration has been consistent for decades, the diaspora living in the West has done a great job at integrating. The vast majority of the immigrants from this group were able to become fluent in the languages of the country they immigrated to, as well as adopt the customs and way of life of the locals. As a result, today, if you travel to Germany, Austria, Italy, or Spain, it would be very difficult to tell whether or not someone belongs to the diaspora or not. This integration has also birthed a phenomena of second and third generation Balkan immigrants who are born and bred in the West and have rarely visited their ancestral lands. At the same time, this has also created an identity crisis amongst the children of first generation immigrants who feel caught between two cultures, as they've spent their entire lives immersed in one, but also having roots from another, and never being fully accepted by either. What's interesting though is that in the West, the perception of Balkan immigrants has also been changing amongst the locals due to the influx of people coming into Europe from the 2016 migration crisis. As more immigrants have entered Europe from quite different cultural groups with a different religious background, this new migrant group has faced significant problems with integration in their new countries. This has naturally caused tensions within Western European states and has grown anti-immigrant sentiment. Ironically, this anti-immigrant sentiment has somewhat benefited the Balkan diaspora, as many natives have started seeing Balkan immigrants as one of the good ones, praising them as the best integrated migrants, similarly to how the sentiment over Italian and Irish migrants shifted in the US after the 50s. Balkan immigrants that were able to integrate and acquire citizenship also became politically active as much as the locals. Overall, Balkaners have been prominent in voting and supporting a variety of political parties on all parts of the political spectrum. However, some Croatian and Serbian communities also became prominent supporters of the German and Austrian right wing, voting for parties like the AfD in Germany and the OVP and FPO in Austria, which is quite ironic, as some immigrants that once faced similar anti-immigrant sentiment have turned anti-immigrant themselves. The Bosnian and Albanian communities, although not being prominent in the far right, have also started to be used as an example by Western Europeans for successful Muslim immigration and integration within their societies. Many government organizations and NGOs have also begun to study their immigration and try to create new outlines on how to integrate new coming Muslim immigrants from the Middle East and beyond based on them. Naturally, as this phenomenon has been quite large since its inception and has only grown larger due to the events that transpired in the 90s and the opening of borders between the EU and the Balkans, the diaspora abroad has become a subject of parody in their homelands. In the Balkans, virtually every country has their own stereotypes and prejudices against their gastarbeiter communities. Mentioning the word alone, gastarbeiter, pops up an image of an overweight bald man wearing a gray or white dress shirt, driving a BMW i5 with one hand on the wheel, adorned by a gold or silver wristwatch, going 170 on the highway and flashing unsuspecting Dacia Logan drivers to death. In their home countries, they are stereotyped with building lavish 3-story houses in some bumfuck village with white marble lines protecting their gates and unfinished facades. In person, they are seen as arrogant, ill-mannered, and full of themselves, believing they are better than the rest because they make more money in Germany working in construction. Ask anyone in the service industry and they can tell you of the time they served a gastarbeiter who proceeded to order the entire menu, drink the tavern dry, broke 50 glasses in one night, and at the end left a meager tip of €2, if that even. The second generation emigres have also faced scrutiny as they'd be made fun of for their heavy German, Swedish, or Italian accents when speaking their native language, whilst also heavily butchering the grammar and utilizing a shit ton of foreign words when speaking. As a result, on Balkan social media, you can find a wide variety of TikTok skits and memes parodying the Diaspora. Immigration from the Balkans in the West has been happening for almost 2 centuries now, and by the middle of the 20th century, it has become a staple of Western European societies that has only grown stronger over the past decades. Although initially many have faced hardship and discrimination with a plethora of negative stereotypes associating them with the misfortunes caused by bad actors from their home countries, the Balkan diaspora has pulled through and become a core of European societies, integrating deeply within their new countries. Although some stereotypes still prevail abroad and at home, most have subsided to harmless teasing and can be expected when anyone is different in any form than the norm. Nevertheless, Balkan immigration as a whole has been seen as a net benefit in Western Europe that has boosted the economies of countries like Germany and Austria, and the diaspora nowadays has been propped up as the poster child for successfully integrated migrants. And yeah, that would be the story of Balkan immigration to the West, generally a topic that gets overshadowed by other stories and headlines regarding immigration. Let me know what you think. Did any of this surprise you? Make sure to write it down in the comment section down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and smash that subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, become a member like these wonderful people. My name is Janusz and you've watched Living Ironically in Europe.
Hey, why are